Namaste and hello. Welcome to SONAS, South Asia Nadi Sambad. SONAS aims to promote dialogue and sharing of perspectives among sectors, disciplines, geographic regions, and among generations about South Asian water challenges. We believe in wholeness of the hydrological cycle as a foundation to make rivers clean for people and freshwater biodiversity. Every week, we will present our water champions' written perspective and conversation on ideas towards sustainable water solutions. I am your host Ajay Dikshit. You can find us on Twitter at Nadi Sambad. These episodes will also be available in other podcast platforms. Please enjoy the conversation. Welcome and namaskar again. In today's episode, Dr. Ramdevi Tachamo Shaha of Kathmandu University will discuss the importance of freshwater biodiversity conservation in rivers of Nepal. Dr. Shah, why is freshwater biodiversity important?
I think before going to in depth in why it is very important to get clear that what constitutes aquatic biodiversity. Biodiversity comprises most of insects from mayflies to dragonflies, mussels, toads, fish, crocodile, tadpoles to trout, iconic mega species like Gangetic river dolphin in animal, and wide range of plants from algae and diatoms to macrophytes that live in watery habitats. And they spend all or partly their lives under water or use water at least for breeding. That is in case of toads. So till date, scientists have identified over 1.4 million species that live on Earth and predict that another 10 million to 100 million unidentified species may exist. Now the point is, aquatic biodiversity alone contributes 10% of all recorded species, while freshwater occupy less than 0.01% of Earth's surface. So biodiversity is not only the richness of species, it is also their genetic variety and diverse habitat in which these biota live. Greater the biodiversity means we have more food, more opportunities for job, research, and recreation. Biodiversity is undervalued, particularly in developing countries, including Nepal. Each aquatic species is important and unique. It is not only because of its sizes, but the genetic makeup of biota, flora and fauna, microorganisms like bacteria, fungi that decompose waste, purify water, regulate nutrients that we discharge into our river system.
Dr. Shah, that's very useful and important. But I think as a pure engineer, I see rivers, but I do not see the intricate in a details that you talked about, various type of flies, algae and fish and all these aquatic lives. I just see water. And then these intricate elements that you highlighted is something I do not understand.
Being an ecologist, I see that most of the people do not have that in-depth knowledge about aquatic ecosystem. We have not integrated the knowledge right from the school level. In other discipline like engineering, they simply talk about infrastructure development or water as a basic element for economic development of the country, but undermining the biota that exists in the system, which regulate the ecosystem and also provide the services which are important for us as well as other wildlife.
Yeah, that's a very important point. Almost 70% of our body is water. Almost 70% of the earth's surface is water. Not having that understanding, just seeing the water only without understanding or without recognizing the other. So let me come back to Bangladesh is a deltaic country. Well, all these rivers come and then they meet so that you have streams and, etc. Aquatic biodiversity such as fish is found in abundance in that area. We are a mountainous country. Of course, we also have Tarai. So what is the state of aquatic biodiversity in Nepal?
The aquatic biodiversity in Nepal is understudied. Has been very scattered knowledge on biodiversity state in Nepal, though Nepal is one of the rich in river ecosystem. And what I should say is like we should not look river as only flowing water. It is a very complex ecosystem. If we see from the headwaters, the ecosystem in headwater or the morphology or the characteristics of headwater is completely different than downstream in Tarai. River system itself is hotspot of biodiversity and which is well accepted across the world. And in case of we have one more advantage of having torrential river, that is it is source of energy for us also. That's why I would call river in Nepal is not only biodiverse hotspot one, it is energy hotspot as well. It is bioenergy hotspot of a landscape for us.
So the ecosystem of rivers, for example, in the Himalayan region, in that areas would be different from those in the mid hills, and then of course go to the Tarai. So even those rivers, the Kosi River in the upper reaches will have a very different ecosystem compared to the reaches in the Tarai.
Very true, actually. So I would like to highlight here the river continuum concept, which hypothesizes that river is connected from upstream to downstream, and it is not connected in terms of water. It is also connected in terms of sediment. I'd like to borrow Webb's Water, Energy, Biodiversity and Sediment from Professor Jayanta. Energy actually bring this sediment from upstream to downstream. Also, there is another important principle, that is the flood pulse. That means periodic inundation that fertile lands riparian vegetations, and which also increase not only biota, it also increased the fertility of land. So that is also important. And another one, like the state of biodiversity in Nepal. So there are so many species which are still yet to be discovered. The worry is like we are destroying so much of our water bodies that before we describe the species, they might have locally extinct.
Yeah.
Or maybe regionally or globally extinct. When we talk about fish, there are around 285 types of fish species in Nepal. Around 50% of the fishes are economically, educationally valuable. But still, we don't know their seasonal variability, their population stock and dynamics, where they spawn, what are the critical habitats for them, or how we can actually make business out of it. So these aspects are still lacking. And another one is like we are destroying the river ecosystem, but still we know there is an impact on biota, there is impact on river ecosystem, but we are unable to quantify the impacts. We don't know how they influence or impact, or what is the degree of the impact. The pollutions that we have generated in Kathmandu has impacted 90 kilometers downstream of the river. So that means the people, not only like people in Kathmandu, are suffered from the pollutions in Bagmati River, that has also equally impacted the agriculture system. So somehow they are deprived of using the resources or the services that are provided by river ecosystem. The pollutions that we generate in one area could impact in other parts of the region, basically in downstream of the river.
I mean, you did talk about, pollution. You also mentioned about, river degradation. From your experience, how do they understand freshwater biodiversity? What is their perception from your experience, Dr. Shah?
In case of hydropower developer, they assume or consider water is the single most element for economic development of the country. And I also agree with that. There is no point that water is one of the important natural resources from which we can uplift the economy of the country. But at the same time, we should not, or we cannot just destroy the resources, because these resources, whatever resources we do have today, is the resources of future generation too. That's why there should be some trade-off between the development and conservations or biodiversity conservations. It is seen like there is a clear lack of the assessment. The assessment is very superficial. Here I would like to highlight like Nepal Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, which actually states Nepal needs to develop or is going to be developed 3 fish sanctuaries by 2017, and we have already passed 2017 and we do not have a single fish sanctuaries till date.
Conceptually, what does a fish sanctuary mean? Are we talking about sanctuary in a river, certain stretch?
That is sanctuary in river. Probably that could be like Karnali River, some stretches of Karnali where the fish is very much abundant and iconic fish or economically valuable, educationally valuable fish are abundant. So that is the one.
You have some understanding of, let's say, the number of fish, number of types, the stock in a particular stretch of a river, and then you say, okay, this is the stretch that we are going to conserve and we're going to declare it as river sanctuary or fish sanctuary. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Can we have fish sanctuary in Bagmati River in Kathmandu at the moment?
I think that is very difficult questions actually, and maybe it is also very difficult to restore it. The thing is like it. We cannot just fill the river with water. We need also the habitat. We need also the environment, like riparian environment, which we have already destroyed, and it needs also like habitat in terms of diversity, which we have already destroyed. May not be impossible, but we might have to spend huge amount of money. We can take an example from some rivers in Germany, like Elbe River, where they have spent millions of euro just to restore couple of kilometers of river stretches. If we have destroyed the river, then it costs huge amount of money. The point is now many river system in Nepal is not yet destroyed. So why don't we conserve at the moment at least some rivers, for example, maybe the Karnali River, which do not have major infrastructure and it is free flowing. So if we actually preserve that one, it would add value later on.
True, but then other rivers are equally important, isn't it? We also have to conserve other rivers.
That's very true, sir. That's very true, because each of the habitat assembles different kind of biota. The habitat and the flow geomorphological structures bring different biota. As I said before, I have highlighted before also, we need some kind of trade-off between development and conservation. Some rivers have been already destroyed, but we should not now destroy the headwaters, because headwaters are very important for spawning, or it also provide refugial area for many biota.
We have now policies which says e-flow has to be released from there. But then in many projects, this policy is not complied with. So where do we begin? What do? We have policies, but we do not respect the policies.
That's very true. For and foremost, like we, every individuals and particularly concerned stakeholders should realize the importance of river ecosystem or freshwater ecosystem and aquatic biodiversity. Awareness is very essential aspect in this manner or in this regard. So I would say like national campaign on importance and present status of biodiversity should be carried out.
No, you have been doing research, you have visited so many river systems in Nepal. So what is your experience? Is it very difficult to convince or talk with people and then to make them appreciate this requirement, or they would say, oh no, this is fish, you don't have to worry. What is your experience, Dr. Shah?
In research in freshwater ecosystem and biodiversity for more than 15 years, the knowledge at grassroots level is somehow zero. So people do not know about biota that are living underwater. Actually, they know fish, and many people, they do not know about it. We should have educations from very beginning, from school level, on these natural resources, including this biodiversity that exists around them or that exists around us.
Water education, the civil engineering, water engineering educations, are these subjects touched upon, mentioned, discussed in water education stream?
There is a discussions going on that engineers, like water engineers, water education should also have knowledge on the ecosystem or like the biota living in that system. So recently, or maybe very soon, Tribhuvan University, Institute of Engineering will also have certain courses on freshwater ecosystem and importance of the ecosystem in their curricula.
Well, that will be an interesting beginning if that happens. A long way to go because you start with education, people will understand, but then when you go to the operational level, there are still gap that we have to bridge.
Because there are so many laws actually related with freshwater ecosystem, related with wetland, or related with aquatic ecosystem. So that's why I think why I personally believe is that if law is strictly regulated, then we have some chances to prohibit these activities or destroy the river ecosystem or conserve biota. It is mentioned in, I just was looking on Aquatic Animal Protection Act 1960. It has clearly mentioned that main responsibility of protecting aquatic animals to be vested in the chief district officer. So it was mentioned, but as you said, because of lack of strict regulations, we do not obey this one. But if there is a penalties or it is clearly monitored, then we may be optimistic in conserving freshwater ecosystem and conserving freshwater biota.
That's very interesting, isn't it? The chief district officer who is more interested in law and order aspect of a district to be responsible for looking at aquatic biodiversity. The assumption seems to be, there are people who would kill aquatic biodiversity, so you punish them rather than conservation. It's kind of quite interesting.
The problem is also like we do not have resources. There is lack of technical knowledge. On top of that, we also do not have resources at bottom level. There is no coordination between department. It's long way to go, but let's hope. Let's be optimistic.
Do we invest resources in research?
If we see the country status or like the budget distribution in research, that is very negligible, even less than 1%, I would say. The thing is like there should be regular funding mechanism to fund researches. Being in research, you cannot get outcomes in a day. Continuous effort. It needs some time to get to obtain results. That's why when we looked at developed nations like United States or like in European Union, they have regular funding mechanism. And that funding mechanism continuously actually fund university professors or university or research institutions who are involved day and night in research. That's why they bring different thoughts, different understandings, and which is clearly lacking in our country because we get like small amount of fund for a year, then what next? We don't have any other options, then we move to another direction. That's why being researcher in developing countries like in Nepal is also hard, and also we are only working on applied sciences than rather in fundamental sciences.
We talked about the challenges, the lack of research, poor understanding of the baseline, the contradiction between development and conservation, fish, aquatic biodiversity, etc., not receiving priority from research, etc. Do you see hope? How do we move forward?
I'm very optimistic, actually. We should be optimistic, but we should align with the ministries, actually, because they are the one who implement. They are the one who actually endorse. So if we work aligning the concerned ministries, then we achieve the conservation. We can have trade-off between development and also conservations. And we should also give some clear indications like, okay, if we want to conserve this one, then we have to develop like this percentage in that area. Clear trade-off between development and conservation.
These are very important basis of life that aquatic biodiversity in our region, in the Himalayan region, in Nepal, both has a base of life for the people. So therefore, we should take this campaign, idea of conserving freshwater diversity and balancing it with development is very key. And that's the kind of conclusion we come from this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Tachamo Shah, for your suggestions to keep championing for the health and conservation of freshwater biodiversity. In the next episode, Dr. Dinesh Kumar Mishra, India's leading scholar activist, who has dedicated his life to systematically documenting and building a historical and local knowledge base on floods and irrigation in Ganga Plains, will reflect on his work. Dr. Mishra's writings, lectures, and public interactions inspire social activists, scholars, organizations to pursue a grounded approach not just to flood management but also the application of context sensitive water knowledge.
Never ever build railing by steel pipes or even whatever type of pipes, And we questioned him, oh, sir, why these pipes cannot be used as a railing? He said the people cut it and take it away. So, so never ever put the steel pipes or whatever pipe, galvanized pipes or whatever pipes in railing because it will not be there. So concrete or brick, it cannot be removed, and even if it is removed, it is of no use. That was a practical lesson. But otherwise, it was all hypothetical.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. We warmly welcome your suggestions for improving SONAS and our conversations. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have enjoyed the conversation. Till then, have a good time and Jai Hos.